Congress may be on break, but no pause in the threats to House Speaker Mike Johnson's gavel. You know, he is gathering up support in this fight, but you'll recall that fellow Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene first filed a motion against him. Johnson now says he's been texting with her, presumably delivering a message like this.
How does this motion to vacate help win back the majority or win a bigger majority?
I don't think it does. And I think all of my other Republican colleagues recognize this is a distraction from our mission. Again, the mission is to save the Republic. And the only way we can do that is if we grow the House majority, win the Senate, and win the White House. So we don't need any dissension right now.
Still, not only has Johnson's speakership been put on notice, he'll now have the challenge of just a one-vote margin once Congressman Mike Gallagher retires on April 19th. Former President Trump is fuming at Gallagher and other Republicans who have headed for the early exits, saying, quote, "Never forget our cowards and weaklings. Such a disgrace." Back with us, Tim Miller, also joining us, Eugene Scott, senior politics reporter for Axios, with me here on set. So, Tim, does Trump does Trump actually lashing out suggest he thinks he has nothing to do with the shrinking majority?
Probably. I don't like when you do this to me, Chris Jansen, but Donald Trump has a point there. I agree with him. Mike Gallagher is kind of a coward. I think we both for different reasons. I think that Mike Gallagher should have stayed in Congress and worked with Democrats to do the right thing, to vote to fund Ukraine, or worked with his fellow moderate Republicans like Brian Fitzpatrick, who are trying to do that. Instead, he headed for the exits before his job was finished, because I guess it wasn't fun to be in Congress or something. It's a really shameful act by Mike Gallagher, but I think this just speaks to the dysfunction in this House. Mike Johnson is obviously in over his head. He's been unable to pass anything so far without the help of Democrats. I think to get this Ukraine and other foreign aid funding passed, he's going to need Democrats to be again. And there's some unhappiness on the right flank, including with the president, who was I think to blame really ultimately. The former president, that is, former President Trump, is to blame ultimately for why we haven't had a vote on things like the border deal and the Ukraine deal, because he doesn't want anything to actually get done in this Congress. And so Mike Johnson's kind of stuck between, those forces.
So let's talk about Ukraine aid, if we can, Eugene. That could be the straw that breaks the camel's back if that's indeed what happens. And I want to play what Republican Don Bacon told NBC News.
Okay.
Let me ask you about the Speaker of the House, because you know that some Republicans oppose him putting a Ukraine aid bill on the floor. Do you think he could lose his speakership over this, Congressman?
It's possible. I'm not going to deny it. We have one or two people that are not team. They're not team players. They'd rather enjoy the limelight, the social media.
That was a pregnant pause, I think we can say, before he answered that question. But I keep hearing different things. It's like, no way they move against Johnson. Oh, I don't know. Maybe it could happen. Right. What are you hearing?
Well, Greene said it's a warning, and there haven't been a lot of far-right Republicans who've come out vocally to support her so far, because what they understand is that the fact that nothing significant got passed in the past year is a bad look for Republicans overall, even if they don't support more support for Ukraine. But we have to remember that people like Greene and Johnson have two different agendas. Greene told her constituents that she would not support anything like Ukraine or support a leader who did support Ukraine. Johnson's focus is getting something passed and working with people in his party and working across the aisle, which is the job of the Speaker of the House. And so it doesn't seem personal very often. I think Johnson actually has come out and said Greene is a friend. That's why they're texting. And her attacks on him, or criticism of him, should I say, hasn't been incredibly personal. They just have two different focuses.
Well, you can tell, listening to some of the folks on the Hill, how frustrated they are. That the closer you get to election, the more nervous people get anyway, right? The House Intel Committee Chair, Mike Turner, is clearly frustrated with some of his far-right colleagues. Take a listen to that.
Unfortunately, the Chaos Caucus has continued to want to stop everything that occurs in Congress. It's not as if they have an alternative plan. We can have radical fringes, even radical individuals who don't really have an ideology or an agenda other than chaos, that can cause disruptions. And that's what we have seen. That certainly makes it difficult for people who just want to get the job done.
So let's say Best case scenario for the speaker is that he stays. But even given that, Eugene, is there any sign, in spite of the frustration we're hearing from so many members on the right, that anything is likely to change between now and the election?
I think the fact that many far-right Republicans have not come out as quickly against Johnson as they did with past speakers suggests that Johnson might have a good chance at keeping things together for a little while longer. But,
so even beyond keeping the speakership, you think there's a good chance that, I don't know, that some sort of kumbaya comes together?
I think it's possible, but I also think we have to remember there are like 6 months until election.
That's true.
Right? Anything could happen, and everybody wants to get reelected, and these individuals are going to figure out what it is that their supporters want them to do to make sure that they stay in Washington.
But a lot of these folks are not worried, right? There's no chance that they're not going to win in their ruby red districts.
Right.
Do they care really enough about the majority to potentially step away from a promise that they think they've made?
I think when we even look at the far-right Republicans, some are in districts that are more secure than others. So while there are some who don't care that much, maybe like Bob Good, there are others who realize that this district that sent me to Washington is not as secure as it used to be. You showed stats of polling showing that Trump and other Republicans don't have as much support as they used to. And when you start losing 5 percentage points, that can get up to 7, and that can get up to 10. And you don't want to do anything that'll keep things going, even if you think you have a secure race.
Eugene Scott, Tim Miller, thank you guys. Much appreciated.
Hey, everyone. MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.